This movie is based on the true events of April 9, 1940, the day Germany launched Operation Weserübung to invade Norway. Their objectives were to take control of the Norwegian coast, capture the king, seize the government, and most importantly, secure Norway's entire gold reserve. As German forces advanced rapidly, the Norwegian king and government were forced to flee for their lives. If the gold fell into Hitler's hands, the resistance wouldn't just weaken, it would end before it even began. So they made a decision, a risky, unplanned, high-stakes mission to move the entire gold reserve out of the country. So get comfortable, I'm going to break it down for you. The night before the invasion, at the movie's main character Frederick's house, they were preparing to celebrate their daughter's birthday with their family and friends. When it about to start, they heard loud air raid siren from outside. Immediately, everyone went down to the basement in panic as a precaution, and even in that situation, they celebrated her birthday. Norway's headquarters receives urgent reports. German forces are already advancing deep into the country. Warships break through the Oslo fort defenses under heavy fire, with intense fighting at Oscarsburg. Despite resistance, they push forward, bombing Horten and rapidly taking control of the key cities. Bergen falls, Trondheim is occupied, Norway is reached after naval clashes. Within hours, Germany secures multiple strategic locations. The night before the invasion, inside the central bank vault, under extreme pressure, officials begin evacuating the gold. Each bar is carefully packed into wooden crates, assigned with serial numbers and sealed. On April 9, early morning, the invasion is already underway. Inside the vault, officials are on edge. Reports confirm that German forces are closing in fast, and there's almost no time left. They quickly shift focus to the next step, moving the gold out. But there's a major problem. To transport everything, they need at least 20 to 25 lorries. One official jokingly says it's nearly impossible to arrange that many vehicles in time unless they start hijacking them. Without hesitation, the chief replied, "Well, great idea, get to it." At Frederick's house, his wife Irene tries to stop him. She knows the invasion has started and doesn't want him to leave. But Frederick makes it clear sensitive information is at risk and he has to go. She questions why him, reminding him he's just a secretary and it doesn't matter. Putting country before family, Frederick promises he will be back in a few hours and that they will leave for Milo after that. A naval officer comes out of the woods and stops a passing car, asking for a lift. An elderly couple agrees and drives him toward the central bank. On the way, they realize he's a warship commander. Then they see it, burning ship out at sea. At the Labour Party headquarters, Frederick takes control. Important documents are secured and the rest are quickly burned before they can fall into German hands. In the middle of it, he gets a call from the finance minister. Panicked and trying to escape, he asks for a driver he can trust. Frederick steps in and decides to escort him by himself. He quickly calls home but no one answers, so he rushes back only to find the house was empty. His wife has already left for a safer place, leaving behind a note. A transporter is doing his usual delivery when he suddenly notices someone trying to take his lorry. He rushes in and confronts him, throwing punches. The man stops him and quickly explains he's not a thief. He's from the central bank on an urgent mission. The transporter doesn't buy it at first. Then he shows official papers and he agreed for the task. At the Central Bank of Norway, lorries are being loaded non-stop with sealed crates. Officials are tracking everything carefully on paper. Outside, chaos is building. Sirens blaring, fighter planes flying overhead, civilians fleeing the city, and German soldiers already marching through the streets. Inside, the pressure is rising to speed up the evacuation. Nini checks on the transport status and learns that all available vehicles have been redirected to the central bank. At the very moment their chief arrives and announces the evacuation commission is being disbanded, effective immediately. The reason is that the government has already started evacuation without them. Nini pushes back, insisting this is their purpose and they should fight back. But the chief shuts it down. Anyone who wants to stay and fight can do it on their own. But the orders are clear. Destroy all documents and leave the city. That moment outside, fighter jets start dropping bombs near the central bank. Most of the lorries have already left the central bank for Lillehammer. The final truck is just about to move when German aircraft begin dropping bombs and enemy troops starts closing in. With no time left, the bank chief orders it to leave immediately straight to Lillehammer. A hesitant bank clerk is forced onto the truck and told to guard the cargo. The truck pulls out with one final warning. No one says a word about what they are carrying. Frederick waits outside the finance headquarters, ready to pick up the minister as promised. Inside the car, the radio keeps running, constant updates of the invasion, air raids, landings, German troops advancing across multiple cities. While he listening, he suddenly spots German soldiers marching toward the building and then entering it. For a moment, everything tightens. Then, just in time, the finance minister rushes out from another exit with his assistant and jumps into the car. Frederick drives off immediately. Inside the central bank, a German commander demands access to the vault. The bank chief, having no choice, hands over the key. When the soldiers opened the vault, it was empty. At the same time, Frederick is driving the finance minister out of the city. The radio keeps broadcasting. German troops have taken key positions and are now pressuring Norway to stop resisting. Meanwhile, in Lillehammer, the lorries arrive at the central bank branch. The crates are unloaded into the vault. Once it's done, the chief thanks the drivers and everyone involved and tells them to go home and stay safe. In Archer, at a government safe house, ministers and officials gather for the night. They rest there before continuing their escape. The next morning, Frederick and the finance minister get back on the road. During the drive, the minister shares his concern. The gold will not be safe in Lillehammer. It has to be moved out of the country. Then he assigns the mission. Frederick is given full responsibility for transporting Norway's entire gold reserve. Frederick asks about the plan, and the minister lays it out clearly. Move the gold to Andolsons on the west coast, where British support is still holding. Frederick hesitates, saying he's not the right man for the job, but the minister makes it clear this is an order. Inside the bank at Lillehammer, Frederick steps in and immediately demands the remaining documents and access to the vault. The bank chief pushes back, questioning who he is and what authority he has. Frederick makes it clear he has been assigned to secure and transport the gold. Still, the chief refuses to act without approval from Governor Rigg. Frederick doesn't back down. He tells him to try calling Rigg himself. At the same time, back at the central bank, a German commander confronts Rigg, demanding answers about the gold. Rigg refuses to respond. The commander slaps him and pressures him to reveal its location. Then new information comes in. Two local boys report seeing a central bank employee arguing with the transporter over a lorry, mentioning a mission to Lillehammer. That was enough for the commander. He connects the pieces instantly. Now he knows where the gold has been moved. At the Lillehammer branch, Frederick tries to reach his wife and daughter, but there is no direct communication with them. He hangs up, still deeply worried. Right then, Nini arrives and finds him. She gives him the latest update. Oslo has already fallen, and Nazi flags are now flying over key government buildings. Then she asks about his situation. Frederick told her he has been assigned to transport Norway's entire gold reserve to Andolsons and hand it over to the British. The problem is, he still has not established contact with them. Nini immediately steps in. She wants to be part of the mission. At first, Frederick hesitates, but Nini makes it clear she is not just family. She can be useful. She has wartime experience and speaks fluent English. She offers to go ahead and establish contact with British forces herself. Frederick thinks for a moment, then finally agrees. In Lillehammer, Frederick gets to work immediately. He sits at a typewriter and prepares a structured form to record every detail of the transport operation. After printing it out, he begins organizing everything accordingly. Despite the pressure surrounding him, he remains calm and focused. Same time, at the railway station, Norway's military commander arrives with his troop and lines them up. Back at the bank, tensions begins to rise. The branch manager confronts Frederick, clearly unhappy with his presence. Frederick cuts straight through the argument. The governor is missing and Germans already on their way. The manager, being stubborn, replied he does not open the vault for Germans either. Outside the bank, the transporter returns and finds the clerk still guarding the lorry after waiting through the entire night. Before anything can settle, a military commander arrives and orders the truck moved to the entrance. The loading must begin immediately. Moments later, he meets Frederick, introducing himself as Major Sunday, the officer in charge of the military escort. He demands to know why nothing has been loaded yet. Frederick points to the problem inside. The bank manager learned is refusing to open the vault without proper authorization. Together, they confront him. Major Sunday pushes hard, arguing that in wartime, action matters more than waiting for orders. But Lund refuses to bend, insisting that banking does not operate like the military. The tension escalates quickly. Sunday orders his soldiers to remove Lund and even threatens him with consequences. Frederick steps in, trying to keep the situation under control without using force. But the pressure becomes too much. Finally, Lund gives in. He walks to the vault and begins entering the security code. At the same time, the German commander is already advancing toward Lillehammer. Inside the bank, Lund struggles to open the vault. He insists the combination is correct, but the door won't open. Major Sunday begins losing patience, suspecting deliberate obstruction. He even accuses Lund of being a collaborator. Frederick does not believe that. He is convinced Lund is genuinely trying to open the vault. With no progress being made, Sunday orders explosive to be brought in. Soldiers quickly set the charges while everyone is ordered to clear the area. Time is running out. The Germans are getting closer by the minute. Then Frederick notices something alarming. Lund is still inside the bank trying to open the vault. He wants Sunday immediately, but the commander ignores him and prepares for detonation. Without hesitation, Frederick turns back and enters the bank alone. Inside, Lund is still struggling under intense pressure, close to losing control. Frederick calms him down and tells him to focus. Lund resets himself, takes a breath, and carefully tries the combination again. This time it works. The vault door finally opens. Lund rushes out just in time to stop the detonation. Nini is on the road listening to radio updates. New orders are being broadcast across the country. All officials are now required to obey the new German-backed authority. She switches the radio off. Moments later, she spots German paratroopers dropping near Lillehammer. Back at the bank, lorries are lined up as crates are loaded one after another. The convoy then moves toward the railway station. The soldiers starts loading the crates onto the train. Major Sunday updates Frederick. German paratroopers have been seen nearby and enemy forces are closing in fast. Frederick acknowledges the warning, then walks into a nearby tent and calmly begins logging every single crate, writing down serial numbers one by one. Sunday watches in frustration and asks how long this is going to take. Frederick replies calmly, as long as it takes. Loading continues only after each entry has been properly recorded. In the middle of the operation, Frederick asks what we should do about the paratroopers. Sunday steps outside and finds the clerk and transporter standing idle. He immediately assigns them as a forward watch unit, ordering them move ahead of the train and monitor enemy movement. The two men head out on a small manual rail car, traveling ahead along the tracks. Back at the station, the loading is finally complete. Frederick confirms the full inventory: 1,503 crates of gold and 39 barrels of coins, packed into 5 freight wagons, totaling 52 tons. The documents are signed. Everything is officially on board. Then overhead, a German aircraft roars past. Frederick looks up. Everyone knows the Germans are close now. Without delaying any longer, they board the train, and the train begins to move. At the Lillehammer bank, the German commander arrives with his troop. He immediately orders his men to find the bank manager. Lund is captured and brought before him. Inside the empty vault, the commander confronts Lund and demands to know where the gold has been taken. But Lund holds his ground, insisting that he does not know. At the same time, further up the railway line, the vanguard moves slowly along the tracks, checking the route ahead. Suddenly, they notice something hanging from the bridge ahead. As they move closer, they realize it is sees a German paratrooper suspended there unconscious. The transporter carefully approaches him, but in an instant, the paratrooper grabs him. A violent struggle breaks out. The clerk panics and fumbles for the flare gun. During the fight, a grenade slips loose and falls to the ground. The transporter reacts instantly, shouting a warning before diving for cover. Second later, the grenade explodes. The paratrooper is blown apart. The clerk desperately calls out, trying to see if the transporter survived. Then he spots movement in the smoke and immediately starts shouting, "Don't shoot!" Gunfire suddenly erupts. Inside the train, the explosion shocks everyone. Major Sunday immediately orders his troops to prepare. Weapons are raised as the train slowly approaches the bridge. Outside, another group of armed men is already aiming rifles directly at the train. The tension spikes instantly. Then a voice calls out, "We are Norwegian soldiers." Everyone relieved. They stepped out of the train. The soldiers explained that they detained the two men ahead because they refused to identify themselves. They also warned that German forces are nearby with patrols already active throughout the area. Without wasting time, Sunday acknowledges the warning and immediately orders the train forward. The train begins moving again to avoid being spotted from the German. The train enters a tunnel and comes to a temporary stop inside. In the darkness of the tunnel, everyone steps out cautiously. Moments later, a German aircraft roars overhead. They remain silent and wait for it to pass. Frederick stands near the exit, watching German aircraft patrol the skies overhead. Major Sunday joins him and makes the situation clear. The train will need to refuel soon, and this tunnel is the only real cover they are going to get. Soon after, the train begins moving again. It travels several more miles through the mountains, and exhaustion slowly takes over. Most of the people on board eventually fall asleep. Then suddenly, the train comes to a hard stop. Guards from the engine room rush inside shouting, "Germans ahead!" Major Sunday reacts instantly. Weapons raised again. Soldiers took positions and tension spread through the entire train. Moments later, another soldier reports that an unarmed civilian is approaching alone. Frederick looks outside and immediately recognizes it's his sister. The soldiers lower their weapons. She boards the train and brings critical news. The route to Andolsens is still clear and British support is waiting there. A cruiser has already arrived to receive the gold. Relief and joy spreads through the train. Without wasting more time, the train picks up speed once again. After pushing through several miles, they finally reach Andolsens. The train comes to a stop directly beside the waiting warship. They step off the train, and for the first time, everyone looks relieved. At the entrance to the warship, Frederick immediately sets up once again, ready to document the transfer in detail. Major Sunday questions it. They are only moving the crates from the train onto the ship, so why repeat the entire process? Frederick answers firmly. He needs complete and accurate records for both the central bank and the finance ministry. With no real choice, Sunday gives the order. One by one, the transfer begins, and between every moment, Frederick carefully tracks and records everything. The transfer is going smoothly, then suddenly German fighter aircraft appear in the distance. Sirens begin roaring across the harbor. Everyone looks up. Major Sunday immediately orders a retreat. Some of the gold crates are already on board the ship, but the remaining ones are rushed back toward the train. In the middle of the chaos, Frederick quickly secures a signature from the naval officer. Panic spreads everywhere. People run in every direction. Then the fighter plane arrives. Gunfire erupts from both sides. The train suddenly starts moving fast in reverse, trying to escape the attack. The aircraft firing continuously. Bombs strike near the tracks. Several train cars are hit and explode into flames. Somehow they manage to push through and finally reach a previous station. Everyone jumps off coughing, struggling to breathe through the smoke. Some of the rail cars are burning intensely, while soldiers desperately try to put out the fire with whatever they can find. Witnessing the destruction, Major Sunday finally snaps. He turns on Frederick, blaming him for the delay and accusing him of caring more about numbers than survival. Reminds him that this is war, not paperwork. Frederick listens in silence, saying nothing. Then Nini steps in. She pulls him away and tells him to ignore it. Around them, soldiers continue battling the flames, trying to recover from the devastating attack. At the station, Nini quickly steps in and contacts officials to get updated information. When she returns, she brings troubling news. They have lost contact with the British and no one knows where the ships have moved. She says she needs to return to Andolsons and find them herself. But Frederick refuses. No one is moving until the bombing settles. Nini sees the truth immediately. The recent attack has shaken him badly. She pulls him aside and speaks to him directly. He cannot let the others see fear or uncertainty now. Frederick finally breaks for the first time. They were only seconds away from death, and he admits he does not know how to lead soldiers or handle a mission in the middle of a war. Nini studies him. She reminds him why the mission matters. This is not about being fearless or perfect. It is about refusing to give up. That is how wars are fought, not by a few heroes, but by ordinary people who keep moving forward no matter what. Frederick listens carefully. He regains control of himself. Before leaving, Nini hands him a small piece of paper. It contains an old contact and the last known location of his wife and daughter. Frederick immediately dials the number. Meanwhile, Nini gets into the car and begins driving toward Andolsons. Alongside her is the volunteer soldier, the famous poet who has been with them since the beginning of the mission. Frederick steps back outside with his logbook. After the bombing, everything is in disorder. Some crates are damaged, while others are completely out of place. Frederick begins reassessing the entire shipment, trying to restore the correct count. From a distance, Major Sunday watches him silently, still clearly frustrated after their earlier confrontation. Slowly, daylight fades into night. Inside the station office, Frederick continues dialing the number, but there is still no answer. Then, a car pulls up outside. He sees the poet driving Nini's car. Before he can react, another vehicle arrives. Nini steps out from a fish transport truck. Frederick immediately asks what happened. Nini explains that contact with the British has finally been re-established and a call is expected soon. Someone must remain by the phone waiting for further instructions. Then she reveals the second part of her mission. The Norwegian government is preparing to leave the country and urgently needs funds. She has been assigned to transport paper currency to them in Molde, using the fish truck to avoid suspicion. The two exchanges a brief warning, "Be careful." Then Nini drives off into the night. That night, they remain at the station while waiting for news. The next morning, inside the station office, the telephone suddenly begins to ring. Frederick was asleep. The transporter wakes him immediately and tells him it's the British. Frederick grabs the phone, listens carefully, confirms the details, and slowly hangs up. Moments later, Major Sunday walks into the office. Frederick delivered updates. The lost British vessel is on its way to Molde to evacuate the king and the Norwegian government. The ship also has enough space to carry the entire gold reserve. Now everything depends on timing. The gold must reach Molde before the king departs. Major Sunday steps outside and immediately issues new orders. The train plan is abandoned. From this point onward, they need vehicles, anything capable of transporting the gold to Molde, and they need them immediately. On the road, the German commander continues the pursuit with his troops, still determined to track down the gold. He radios headquarters. They demand an update, questioning whether he is having trouble locating the transport. The commander immediately shuts down the concern. He insists everything is under control and assures them they will recover the gold soon. Then he ends the call, clearly frustrated, and orders the driver to move faster. Inside the station, Major Sunday and his men gather every available vehicle they can find, trucks, vans, anything capable of carrying the gold. Frederick immediately organizes the operation. He shows the bank clerk how to log everything properly. Watching this, Sunday steps in and orders the man to move the crates directly from the train to the lorries without stopping for paperwork. Frederick calmly pushes back. Order, he says, is the only thing keeping the operation together. Every crate must be registered, no exceptions. Sunday insists again. The tension rises instantly and the entire station falls silent. Then the poet steps forward. He reminds everyone what is truly at stake and why the mission matters. His words cut through the conflict and the mood shifts. Work resumes immediately. Crates are unloaded from the wagons, registered, and loaded onto the trucks one by one. As each wagon is emptied, Frederick personally checks it before moving to the next. Once a vehicle is filled, Sunday Sunday sends it without delay. A short time later, the station master approaches Sunday with urgent information. German forces are closing in fast. The roads ahead are damaged and the convoy will need to use a ferry to continue toward Molde. Sunday immediately orders everyone into the vehicles. Within moments, the convoy leaves the station in a rush. The German commander finally reaches the station. He noticed every wagon is empty. The gold is gone. Back on the road, the convoy has split apart. The vehicles are traveling separately to avoid drawing attention. In one of the trucks, the bank clerk and the transporter push forward at high speed. Then suddenly, a German fighter aircraft roars overhead. Both men tense instantly. At the same time, inside the aircraft, the pilot radios the German commander. He reports spotting a single lorry and asks whether they should move in. The commander immediately rejects the idea. They are looking for a larger transport carrying the full shipment. He orders the pilot to continue searching and report back immediately if anything bigger is found. On another road, Frederick is driving a van, unboarding the poet and several soldiers. At one point, the vehicle suddenly gets stuck. The soldiers try pushing the van free, but it does not move. Frederick tells them to gather sticks and branches. At the same time, the poet runs toward a nearby farmhouse, hoping to find a tractor. A short while later, he returns, not with a tractor, but with horses. They tie the van to the horses and pull together. This time it works. The vehicle finally breaks free from the mud. They continue moving and eventually reach the ferry crossing point, where Major Sunday is already waiting for the lost remaining vehicles. Sunday updates Frederick the ferry is on its way and most of the convoy has already crossed. Only one lorry is still missing. Frederick remains confident. He believes it will make it in time. Then the story cuts to the missing lorry. The transporter and the bank clerk are stranded on the roadside. The engine has failed after the drive belt snapped. They search desperately for tools or anything that might repair it, but there is nothing useful. Back on the road, the German commander studies the deep tracks in the mud and the sticks left behind beneath the tires. Realizing they are close, he orders his man forward immediately. At the ferry crossing, Frederick drives his van onto the ferry while the others step out and wait. Major Sunday tells him the truth. The lost lorry has probably broken down and they cannot afford to wait any longer. They need to cross now, but Frederick refuses to abandon it. Still holding on to hope, he points out that his van is blocking the entrance to the ferry. If the missing lorry arrives, there will be no room for it to board. After a moment, Sunday reluctantly agrees. He orders the soldiers to unload the gold crates from the van and move them directly into the ferry. Once the transfer is complete, Frederick reverses the van off the ferry, clearing space for the missing vehicle. Back on the road, the transporter and the bank clerk continue struggling with the broken engine. They keep working desperately to repair it. Then finally, the engine starts. Relieved and excited, they waste no more time. The lorry speeds toward the ferry crossing. At the ferry crossing, everyone waits anxiously for the last missing lorry. Then they hear it, the roar of an aircraft engine. Major Sunday looks up and spots a German fighter closing in fast. Sunday immediately orders the ferry to move, but Frederick refuses. They must wait for the last lorry. The commander snaps back and repeats the order to depart, but Frederick argues that this is no longer only about the gold. It is about their man as well. Forced to make a brutal decision, Sunday declares that a few lives may have to be sacrificed to save the rest. The ferry slowly begins pulling away from the dock. Then suddenly Frederick jumps off the ferry. Sunday shouts after him, but Frederick does not respond. Left with no choice, Sunday orders the ferry to return toward the dock. At the exact moment the missing lorry finally appears, the German aircraft immediately attacks, unleashing machine gun fire and rockets toward the road. The transporter drives straight through the chaos and forces the lorry onto the ferry. Right then, German troops arrive. The German commander steps out and sees the ferry escaping into the distance. He orders his troops to prepare. On his command, the soldiers open fire. The Germans respond immediately with machine guns, bullets tearing across the dock as the ferry finally pulls away. Norwegian soldiers dive for cover while the battle erupts behind them. Then the aircraft attacks again. A bomb drops directly toward the ferry but misses. For a brief moment, everything goes quiet. attacked. German troops reach the dock and can only watch helplessly as the ferry slips further away. But the danger is not over yet. The aircraft circles back for another attack run. Panic spreads across the ferry as soldiers dive for cover once again. Even the German commander on shore notices the plane turning back toward the target. Frederick stands frozen, staring at the aircraft. Plane closes in rapidly. Everyone believes this is the end, but at the last second, the aircraft passes overhead without firing or dropping another bomb. For reason of his own, the German commander had ordered the pilot not to fire on the ferry. Slowly, the German commander lowers his radio. Then he walks to the edge of the dock and silently watches the ferry disappear into the distance. The German lieutenant assumes the chase is over and tells the commander that they should give up. But the German commander does not even consider the idea. He immediately snaps back. Giving up is not an option. Now they know exactly where the convoy is heading, and if necessary, he says the Luftwaffe will level the entire cities to stop the gold from reaching the British ships. Then he gives a direct order: prepare a plane. He is going there himself to see how it ends. They finally reach Molde, but even from a distance they can see the situation is catastrophic. The entire harbor is under heavy German attack. Bombs are falling across the city, buildings are burning, and civilians are running in panic while anti-aircraft guns desperately fire back at the aircraft overhead. Still, the convoy does not stop. They drive straight into the chaos and pull up beside the waiting warship. Everyone immediately jumps out. Nini rushes directly to Frederick. She tells him there is almost no time left. The ship is only waiting for the king and the government before departing. Immediately, the unloading begins. Crates move from the trucks to the registration table, then directly onto the ship. At the same time, Nini reveals another problem. The paper currency is still locked inside the bank vault, and no one has been able to open it. Frederick stays focused and said, one problem at a time. Then he walks straight back to the logging table and continues the count. Around them, the pressure intensifies. Soldiers and workers unload crate after crate as fast as possible, desperately trying to get the gold on board before the king arrives and before the Germans strike docks again. Then several cars arrive near the harbor. The finance minister and other government officials step out and move quickly toward the operation. The minister approaches Frederick and briefly acknowledges what they have managed to accomplish under impossible conditions. At the exact moment, another vehicle arrives. This time it was the king. Instantly, the atmosphere changes. Conversations stop. Everyone stands in silence and respect as the king slowly walks toward the ship alongside his companions. Even as the evacuation continues, Frederick turns back to the finance minister with one final concern. Nearly 18 tons of gold remain behind. He asks for more time, but the minister makes it clear there is nothing more he can do. The remaining gold will have to continue moving separately. Then, without another word, he boards the ship. Moments later, the ship departs. Then suddenly he realizes Nini is missing. He immediately orders Major Sunday to find a boat. At the same time, he hands the registration paper. Then Frederick breaks into a run toward the boat. At the bank, Nini and several others desperately try to force the vault door open. She keeps shouting at them not to stop. Kick it, push it, don't give up. Then Frederick arrives. Nini immediately makes her position clear. She refuses to leave without the paper currency. At that exact moment, German aircraft return overhead and the bombing begins again. Everyone dives for cover as explosions shake the streets around them. Meanwhile, back at the dock, Major Sunday secures a smaller boat and the rest of the gold begins transporting onto it. Back at the bank, another explosion erupts nearby. A massive wooden pole crashes to the ground. Frederick, Nini and the soldiers immediately grabs it and use it as a battering ram against the bank door. Finally, the door breaks open. They rush through smoke-filled corridors and reach the vault. Inside, they find trunks packed with paper currency. Without wasting a second, they begin hauling everything outside and loading it onto the truck waiting nearby. From above, the German commander orders the pilot to wipe out everyone still on the shore. At the dock, Major Sunday instantly orders everyone into cover, but the bank clerk never hears him. The transporter spots the aircraft diving toward them. Without hesitation, he sprints toward the clerk and shoves him out of the line of fire. Machine gun rounds rip across the dock. The transporter is hit. At the bank, they continue hauling trunks filled with paper currency one after another and loading them onto the truck. While stepping out of the building, Frederick suddenly notices an abandoned gasoline tank surrounded by flames directly across from the bank. Instantly realizing the danger, he orders the truck moved further away. Then they head back inside for the final trunk. The moment they carry it out, the fuel tank explodes. A massive fireball erupts across the street. Everyone dives for cover as flames and debris tear through the area. Eventually, the final trunk is loaded, the bombing stops, the skies fall silent. Night passes, morning arrives. Back at the dock, the transporter is gone. The bank clerk sits beside his body in shock while Major Sunday and the remaining soldiers wait for Frederick's return. Some of the gold has already been shipped out, but several lorries carrying gold and paper currency still remain behind. Frederick finally returns alongside Nini. The moment he sees the transporter's body, the reality of everything hits him. Nearby, the bank clerk completely breaks down in tears. Sunday quietly steps forward and tells they did everything they could, but now they have to keep moving. The remaining crates are loaded back onto the lorries. Around them, the city is devastated. Fires still burn across the city, while civilians flee with their families through the ruins left behind by the attacks. From there, Frederick, Sunday and the convoy continue north toward the Chitron. When they arrive, the locals stare at them in confusion. Frederick approaches a man near the dock and explains the situation directly. They are transporting Norway's gold reserve, the Germans are hunting them, and they desperately need help moving it further north. After seeing the condition they were in and understanding what is at stake, the civilian immediately agrees to help. Together, they begin unloading the remaining gold onto fishing boats one by one. The boats sail out into the water. But even then, the German continues searching. Aircraft suddenly appear overhead again, circling above the sea. Everyone hides silently inside the cabins while the planes patrol the area. The pilots cannot determine which boat carries the gold or whether any of them carry it at all. After several passes, the German commander finally accepts the truth. The gold is gone. Defeated, he orders the pilot to turn back. The aircraft disappears into the distance. Silence finally returns, and slowly everyone steps out from the cabins. Inside the boat, Nini uses the radio phone to contact someone she knows. After a brief conversation, she immediately walks over to Frederick with the news. His wife and daughter are safe. They made it to Sweden. For the first time in days, Frederick finally looks relieved. The two quietly embrace as the weight of the mission slowly begins to lift. Nearby, the poet reflects on everything they have survived together and begins reciting a poem to the boat driver. And at last, the mission finally comes to an end. 1 month after the invasion, the final 18 tons of Norway's gold safely arrive in Tromsø. From there, the gold is transported out of the country aboard the British warship and later moved to England, the United States and Canada. That gold would become a lifeline for the Norwegian government in exile and for the Allied resistance throughout the war. And after the war ended, it also helped rebuild Norway itself.